Chapter 8. Morgan's Regret. Morgan's return to their home was starkly different from the vibrant, sun-drenched island that had once been a symbol of their shared joy and excitement. The house, a place that had held so many happy memories, now felt cold and unwelcoming. The familiar surroundings were imbued with an oppressive silence, each creak of the floorboards and every rustle of the curtains echoing the emptiness he felt inside. He walked through the front door, the key turning in the lock, with a finality that seemed to underscore the gravity of his situation. The house, still adorned with traces of their life together, photos on the walls, shared belongings scattered about, now seemed like a gallery of their past happiness, a painful reminder of what had been lost. The initial shock of returning home without Jenny was almost unbearable. Every room, every corner of the house seemed to whisper memories of their life together, each one tinged with the pain of his betrayal. He found himself staring at the framed photographs on the wall, memories of happier times when everything had seemed perfect. There they were, laughing on a beach, holding hands during a romantic dinner, moments that now felt like they belonged to another lifetime. Morgan's days were consumed by a relentless loop of self-recrimination. He tried to process what had happened, but the weight of his guilt was suffocating. He replayed the events of the past weeks over and over in his mind, searching for answers and understanding. How had he allowed himself to stray so far from the commitment he had made to Jenny? What had driven him to betray the person he loved most? His reflection wasn't limited to his actions, but extended to the underlying issues within their relationship. He questioned whether he had been blind to the problems they had been facing, or if he had simply chosen to ignore them. He considered whether he had taken Jenny's love and trust for granted, and if so, why he hadn't recognized the warning signs earlier. The more he delved into his thoughts, the more he realized how deeply he had hurt Jenny and how much he had jeopardized their future. The regret he felt was profound. It wasn't just about the physical act of infidelity, but about the emotional betrayal that came with it. He had broken the trust that had been the cornerstone of their relationship, and now he was faced with the daunting task of trying to rebuild it, if it could be rebuilt at all. Morgan tried to reach out to Jenny in every possible way. He called her, sent texts, and even wrote heartfelt emails. His messages were filled with apologies, expressions of remorse, and pleas for forgiveness. He wanted to explain his actions, to make her see that he was committed to understanding his mistakes and working on himself. He promised to do whatever it took to make amends and to prove his love. Despite his efforts, Jenny remained distant and unresponsive. Her silence was a constant reminder of the chasm that now lay between them. Every unanswered call and unacknowledged message was a painful jolt, a reminder of how far he had fallen from grace. It was as though she had erected an impenetrable barrier around herself, one that he couldn't breach, no matter how hard he tried. Morgan's frustration grew as the days went by. He found himself staring at his phone, willing it to ring or ding with a new message from Jenny. He worried about what she was doing, where she was, and whether she was starting to move on without him. The uncertainty of her feelings and her plans was a tormenting unknown, and he was left to grapple with the consequences of his actions in isolation. One particularly difficult evening, Morgan sat alone at their dining table, a place that had once been the setting for shared meals and intimate conversations. The table was now empty, and the silence was oppressive. He found himself reflecting on the small, everyday moments they had shared, cooking together, discussing their day, simply enjoying each other's company. These moments, once taken for granted, now seemed like precious treasures he had lost. In his solitude, Morgan began to understand the full scope of his mistake. He realized that it wasn't just about the immediate consequences of his infidelity, but about the long-term impact on their relationship. He had destroyed the foundation of trust and intimacy that they had built over the years. The realization that he might have lost Jenny forever was a bitter pill to swallow. He sought professional help, hoping that therapy would provide him with the tools to understand his behavior and address the issues that led to his infidelity. The sessions were challenging, forcing him to confront uncomfortable truths about himself and his actions. He explored his motivations, his insecurities, and the ways in which he had failed to communicate with Jenny. The therapy was a grueling process, but it was also a necessary step in his journey towards self-awareness and healing. Morgan also began to reflect on the future, trying to envision a path forward without Jenny by his side. He considered the possibility of rebuilding his life and starting anew, but the thought of doing so without her was almost unbearable. The idea of living with the regret of losing her was a weight he wasn't sure he could carry. As time passed, Morgan tried to find solace in small routines and moments of self-care. He focused on rebuilding his life, working on his personal growth, and finding ways to move forward, even if it meant doing so alone. The process was slow and painful, but he hoped that one day Jenny might see the changes he was making and consider giving their relationship another chance. Morgan's journey was marked by deep regret and a constant yearning for redemption. He understood that he had a long road ahead, and that the path to forgiveness and reconciliation would require patience, persistence, and a profound commitment to change. For now, he could only wait and hope that, in time, Jenny might find it within herself to forgive him and allow them to heal together. Chapter 9. The return. 2 weeks after their painful separation, Jenny returned to their home. The journey back was a mix of apprehension and resolve. As she drove up to their house, she felt a surge of conflicting emotions. The place that had once been a symbol of their shared dreams and happiness now represented a battleground of hurt and betrayal. Jenny approached the house with a measured calm, trying to keep her emotions in check. The familiar sight of their home, with its well-kept lawn and welcoming facade, was both comforting and unsettling. The knowledge that she was about to face Morgan again, and the decision she had made to test their marriage, weighed heavily on her shoulders. The doorbell rang, and Morgan's heart raced as he heard the chime. He had been waiting anxiously for this moment, hoping for a chance to prove himself and make amends. He had spent countless hours preparing for her return, trying to find the right words and actions that might show his sincerity and commitment to their marriage. When Jenny stepped through the door, Morgan was struck by the sight of her. She looked composed, her demeanor a stark contrast to the turmoil he had been experiencing. Her eyes, however, betrayed a depth of emotion that he couldn't quite read. He took a deep breath, summoning the courage to face her. "Jenny," Morgan said, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and apprehension. "I'm so glad you're back. I've missed you." Jenny offered a small, tentative smile. "Morgan," she replied, her voice steady, "I've had time to think, and I've decided that I'm willing to try and rebuild our marriage. I want us to work through this." Morgan's relief was palpable. He took a step closer, his eyes searching hers for any sign of lingering doubt or anger. "Thank you," he said earnestly. "I promise I'll do everything I can to make things right. I've been working on myself, trying to understand what went wrong and how to fix it." Jenny nodded, her expression carefully neutral. "I appreciate that. Let's take it one step at a time. We need to be patient and open with each other." As they began to settle back into their routine, Jenny made a concerted effort to appear cooperative and willing to work on their relationship. She participated in conversations about their future, engaged in joint activities, and even attended counseling sessions with Morgan. On the surface, everything seemed to be progressing as hoped. However, beneath her calm exterior, Jenny was meticulously plotting her revenge. Her anger and pain had not dissipated. They had merely taken on a different form. Forgiving Morgan, she realized, was not enough. She needed him to understand the full extent of her suffering, to feel the same depth of pain and betrayal that had been inflicted upon her. In private, Jenny began to formulate her plan. She meticulously documented every aspect of her revenge, ensuring that it would have the maximum impact on Morgan. Her strategy was not born out of a desire to hurt him for the sake of hurting him, but rather to achieve a sense of justice and closure. She felt that only by making him experience a fraction of her anguish could she truly begin to heal. One element of her plan involved leveraging the evidence she had gathered during their separation. Jenny had hired a private investigator to collect detailed information about Morgan's actions and their implications. She intended to use this evidence strategically, ensuring that Morgan fully comprehended the consequences of his betrayal. The documents were kept hidden, but Jenny reviewed them regularly, her determination growing stronger with each passing day. Jenny also sought ways to subtly test Morgan's commitment and sincerity. She would engage in conversations that seemed innocent, but were designed to gauge his reactions and see if he was truly dedicated to changing his behavior. She monitored his responses closely, searching for any sign of insincerity or hesitation. Additionally, Jenny began to reach out to Morgan's friends and family, subtly sharing her side of the story. She wanted to ensure that Morgan's betrayal was not only acknowledged by him, but also understood by those closest to him. By making her pain and suffering known to his social circle, she aimed to amplify the emotional impact of her revenge. At home, Jenny's interactions with Morgan were marked by a veneer of normalcy. She participated in household activities, attended events with him, and engaged in conversations about their future. Yet her actions were carefully calculated, each gesture and word part of a larger scheme. She wanted Morgan to believe that they were making progress, all the while setting the stage for her ultimate revelation. As the days passed, Jenny felt a growing sense of empowerment. She was no longer a passive victim of Morgan's betrayal. She was taking control of the situation and orchestrating her own form of retribution. The process was both exhausting and invigorating. It allowed her to channel her anger into something constructive, even as it prolonged her emotional struggle. Morgan, on the other hand, remained hopeful and optimistic. He was determined to prove his love and dedication to Jenny, convinced that their efforts would eventually lead to reconciliation. He was unaware of the full extent of Jenny's plans and believed that their relationship was on a path to recovery. Jenny's return to their home marked the beginning of a complex and emotionally charged phase of their relationship. It was a period of facade and subterfuge, where outward appearances belied the intense internal struggle Jenny was experiencing. Her quest for revenge was not just about causing Morgan pain. It was about reclaiming her sense of self and finding closure in a way that she felt was justified. As she continued to execute her plan, Jenny grappled with her emotions, balancing the need for retribution with the desire to heal and move forward. The process was fraught with tension and uncertainty, but it was a necessary step in her journey toward understanding and resolution. Part 2. The Revenge Unfolds. Chapter 10. Subtle Manipulations. Jenny's return marked the beginning of a carefully orchestrated plan to make Morgan feel the full weight of his betrayal. Though she had outwardly agreed to work on their marriage, she had not forgiven him, nor had she forgotten the pain he had caused. Instead, she embarked on a campaign of subtle psychological manipulation designed to extract retribution in the form of emotional torment. It began with seemingly innocent comments. Jenny had noted the way Morgan's eyes would flicker with discomfort whenever she brought up Lena, the woman with whom he had been unfaithful. She exploited this reaction, understanding that every mention of Lena was a reminder of his infidelity. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Jenny casually broached the subject. "I was thinking about Lena today," she said nonchalantly, stirring her pasta with a fork. "You know, she was really quite beautiful. It's hard to forget someone with such an enchanting presence." Morgan's fork froze, halfway to his mouth. He looked up, his face pale. "Why are you bringing her up now?" he asked, his voice strained. Jenny shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Oh, I don't know. It just came to mind. I remember how you said she had this tragic story about losing her family. It must have been so hard for her." Morgan shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He struggled to find the right words, feeling a mix of shame and frustration. I didn't mean for it to come to this. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make things right." Jenny gave him a placid smile. "I know you're trying. It's just that, well, it's hard to forget everything that's happened." She let the sentence hang in the air, her gaze steady and unyielding. The following day, she continued her subtle campaign. As they went about their daily routine, Jenny would slip references to Lena into their conversations. During breakfast, she casually remarked on how Lena's stories of hardship had a certain allure, contrasting them with their own seemingly mundane life. At dinner, she would make offhand comments about how Lena's charm must have been irresistible, punctuating her observations with a sigh of faux wistfulness. Morgan's discomfort was palpable. He could feel his guilt resurfacing with each mention of Lena. It was as though Jenny was digging at an open wound, and he was powerless to stop the bleeding. His attempts to redirect the conversation or deflect the topic were met with Jenny's calm persistence. She would steer the discussion back to Lena with an almost clinical detachment, her eyes cold and watchful. Jenny's manipulations were not confined to conversations. She would also subtly remind Morgan of the romantic moments they had shared during their vacation, moments that now seemed tainted by his betrayal. She would mention how their time together had felt special compared to the fleeting interactions he had had with Lena. Each reference was a calculated jab intended to provoke guilt and self-reproach. In addition to her verbal cues, Jenny adopted a passive-aggressive approach. She would leave reminders of their vacation scattered around the house, photographs of them together, souvenirs, and mementos. These reminders served as constant symbols of what Morgan had jeopardized, and they intensified his feelings of remorse. Chapter 11. Creating Doubt. Jenny's manipulation extended beyond mere conversation. She began to affect Morgan's daily life in more direct ways, furthering her plan to unsettle him and make him question his place in their relationship. One of her primary tactics was to plan outings and then cancel them at the last moment. They had previously enjoyed making plans together, from dinner dates to weekend trips. Now Jenny would schedule activities, only to call them off with little explanation. Let's go to that new restaurant we've been talking about, Jenny would suggest, a hint of excitement in her voice. I've made reservations for tonight. Morgan would eagerly agree, looking forward to the chance to spend quality time with her. Yet just hours before they were due to leave, Jenny would change her mind. I'm sorry, but I'm not feeling up to it tonight. Can we reschedule? Her cancellations became a pattern. Each time, Morgan would try to understand her mood, apologizing for his own eagerness and attempting to reassure her. But Jenny's indifference to his attempts at reconciliation was palpable. She would shrug off his apologies, often seeming annoyed by his efforts to make things right. This behavior left Morgan constantly on edge. He began to second-guess everything he did, wondering if he was doing enough or if he was somehow causing Jenny's unhappiness. The uncertainty gnawed at him, creating a sense of instability in their relationship. The more Jenny cancelled plans, the more Morgan's anxiety grew. He became increasingly unsure of his place in her life, feeling like a constant disappointment. Jenny's actions also included creating a facade of emotional distance. She would engage in activities on her own or with friends, leaving Morgan feeling isolated. When he attempted to join her or inquire about her plans, she would respond with vague answers or express irritation. For instance, when Morgan asked about her plans for the weekend, Jenny might say, "I'm going out with some friends. I need some space." Her words were casual, but the underlying message was clear. She didn't want his company. This withdrawal made Morgan feel as though he was intruding on her life, furthering his sense of exclusion and confusion. Jenny's indifference was a key element of her strategy. She would often respond to Morgan's overtures for reconciliation with a lack of enthusiasm, making him question her feelings and commitment to their relationship. Her responses were intentionally ambiguous, designed to make him doubt whether she was truly invested in repairing their marriage. As time went on, Jenny's manipulations became more intricate. She would subtly alter her behavior to keep Morgan guessing, creating a dynamic where he felt as though he was constantly walking on eggshells. His efforts to restore their relationship seemed futile, and he began to lose confidence in his ability to make things right. Jenny's strategy was working. Morgan was increasingly plagued by doubts and insecurities. The emotional turmoil caused by her actions was a reflection of the pain she felt, and though it was a calculated maneuver, it was driven by a deep sense of hurt and betrayal. Jenny's goal was not just to extract revenge, but to force Morgan to confront the full impact of his actions and understand the depth of the damage he had caused. In her quest for retribution, Jenny found a twisted sense of satisfaction. Each doubt and each moment of discomfort Morgan experienced was a step toward her ultimate goal of making him feel the pain he had inflicted on her. The process was exhausting and emotionally draining, but it was a necessary part of her journey toward finding closure and reclaiming her own sense of justice. Chapter 12. The Ultimate Betrayal. As Jenny continued to execute her plan for revenge, she decided to escalate her manipulations by introducing a new element to her strategy. She reconnected with Max, an old friend from her college days who had always harbored a quiet affection for her. Jenny knew that Max's feelings for her could serve as the perfect catalyst for Morgan's escalating jealousy and insecurity. Max was someone Jenny hadn't seen in years, but their past interactions had been marked by a deep and genuine friendship. She reached out to him under the guise of catching up. Max, delighted by the opportunity to reconnect, agreed to meet. Jenny arranged their first meeting at a quaint coffee shop, a place she had chosen deliberately to evoke a sense of nostalgia and intimacy. When Jenny met Max, the warmth of their conversation and the ease with which they slipped back into their old rapport was evident. They reminisced about their college years, shared laughs, and enjoyed each other's company. Jenny made sure to highlight their shared history and the natural connection they had, subtly implying that their renewed friendship was something special. Over the next few weeks, Jenny orchestrated more frequent meetings with Max. She would invite him over for dinner, arrange outings, and often have him accompany her on errands. Each time, she made sure to appear relaxed and affectionate in his presence, further fueling the impression that their relationship might be more than just friendly. Morgan began to notice the increased frequency of Jenny's outings with Max. He saw the texts and phone calls exchanged between them, and the casual way Jenny would mention her plans to spend time with him. The situation was crafted to look suspiciously like the early stages of an affair. Jenny's calculated nonchalance only added to Morgan's growing unease. Jenny played her role perfectly, maintaining a demeanor that was both friendly and detached. When Morgan inquired about her time with Max, she would respond with a casual tone. "Oh, Max and I just caught up. It's nice to have someone from the past to talk to," she would say, her voice laced with an air of innocence. To intensify Morgan's feelings of insecurity, Jenny would occasionally mention aspects of her time with Max that were intimate but non-specific. She would speak of how understanding Max was, how he made her laugh, and how refreshing it was to reconnect with someone who knew her so well. These comments were designed to amplify Morgan's jealousy and discomfort. Jenny's plan was working as intended. Morgan's mind raced with thoughts of betrayal and infidelity. The uncertainty about Jenny's relationship with Max consumed him, leading to sleepless nights and restless days. He began to question whether Jenny's renewed closeness with Max was a form of payback or something even more damaging. Chapter 13. Morgan's Desperation. As the days passed, Morgan's desperation grew. The weight of his guilt and the anxiety over Jenny's apparent closeness with Max pushed him to the brink of emotional collapse. The constant speculation about whether Jenny was having an affair with Max gnawed at him, eroding his sense of stability and peace. Morgan's attempts to address the issue with Jenny were met with a mixture of frustration and resignation. He reached a breaking point when he decided to confront her directly. His hope was to lay everything on the table, to expose the truth, and to find some resolution to the turmoil he was experiencing. One evening, as they sat in their living room, the tension was palpable. Jenny was reading a book, her posture relaxed and unassuming. Morgan paced back and forth, his face etched with a combination of anger and sorrow. He finally stopped in front of her, his voice trembling with emotion. "Jenny, we need to talk," Morgan said, his tone strained. "I can't keep living like this. I've seen how much time you've been spending with Max, and it's driving me crazy. I need to know what's going on." Jenny looked up from her book, her expression a mix of surprise and concern. "Morgan, what are you talking about?" "You know exactly what I'm talking about," Morgan replied, his voice rising. "The texts, the calls, the time you spend with him. It feels like you're having an affair, and it's tearing me apart. Are you seeing him? Are you planning to leave me?" Jenny set her book aside, her face taking on a look of wounded innocence. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting Morgan's with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "Morgan, I understand that this is hard for you, but you're not being fair. Max is an old friend. We've been catching up, but that's all it is." Morgan's eyes narrowed with disbelief. "You expect me to believe that? You've been spending so much time with him. It feels like you're trying to make me suffer, just like I made you suffer." Jenny shook her head, her expression one of pained sincerity. "Morgan, You know how much I've been struggling with everything that's happened. Yes, I've been spending time with Max, but that's because I needed a friend. I'm not doing this to hurt you or to get back at you. Her voice carried an air of calm resignation, and she spoke with a tone that seemed both reassuring and distant. I'm still trying to process everything. I'm trying to understand how we can move forward. I need to focus on myself right now, and Max is just part of that process. Morgan's desperation mounted. He felt as if he was drowning in a sea of uncertainty and regret. Jenny's refusal to admit to any wrongdoing and her calm demeanor made it even harder for him to gauge the truth. His attempts to make sense of the situation only led him further into emotional chaos. Jenny's performance was deliberate and calculated. She did not acknowledge any wrongdoing, instead maintaining an air of innocence and detachment. Her goal was to make Morgan feel the full weight of his actions and to force him to confront the reality of his betrayal without offering him any solace. The confrontation left Morgan emotionally drained and more confused than ever. The unresolved tension between them was a constant reminder of his guilt and Jenny's perceived betrayal. Despite his best efforts to seek clarity and reconciliation, he was left with more questions than answers. Jenny's manipulation had achieved its desired effect. Morgan was now consumed by self-doubt and anguish, his desperation reflecting the profound emotional impact of Jenny's revenge. The process was both painful and cathartic for Jenny, serving as a powerful reminder of the depth of her hurt and the extent of her need for justice. Chapter 14. The Breakdown. The days following Morgan's confrontation with Jenny were marked by a deepening sense of despair. His anxiety and paranoia about Jenny's interactions with Max had reached a fever pitch. The constant uncertainty gnawed at him, eroding his ability to function normally. He found himself consumed by sleepless nights and erratic behavior, unable to escape the self-reproach and anguish that haunted him. Morgan's breakdown was both mental and emotional. The facade of control he had tried to maintain crumbled under the weight of his guilt and the growing realization of his estrangement from Jenny. He had attempted to channel his energy into work and daily routines, but the effort only highlighted the chasm between him and the life he had once known. One evening, after a particularly taxing day, Morgan arrived home early. The usually comforting environment of their house now felt like a prison. His thoughts were spiraling, and he was struggling to keep them from overwhelming him. He knew he couldn't go on like this, and the thought of losing Jenny forever was unbearable. When Jenny walked into the living room, she found Morgan sitting on the couch, his shoulders slumped and his face buried in his hands. The sight of him in such a state was a stark contrast to the man she had once known. The anguish etched on his face was raw and palpable. Jenny approached cautiously, her heart a mix of emotions, anger, sadness, and a glimmer of concern. She sat beside him, her presence a silent testament to her own conflicted feelings. Morgan looked up at her, his eyes swollen and red from lack of sleep and tears. "Jenny," he began, his voice cracking with desperation, "I can't take it anymore. I'm falling apart. I know I messed up, and I'm so sorry. I can't bear the thought of losing you. I'll do anything, anything, to make this right." The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. Jenny could see the depth of his remorse and the genuine fear in his eyes. Morgan's usually confident demeanor was replaced by a broken man who was struggling to come to terms with the enormity of his mistakes. Morgan's breakdown was an outpouring of every repressed emotion he had been battling. "I've been so consumed by my guilt and my fears about Max," he continued, his words tumbling out in a torrent. I can't stop thinking about how I hurt you. I keep reliving it over and over. Please, Jenny, just tell me what I need to do. I need you back in my life. I'm lost without you." Jenny's initial reaction was a mix of shock and unresolved anger. She had watched Morgan's behavior with a growing sense of detachment, her own plan of revenge taking precedence. But seeing him in such a fragile state, her anger began to soften. The depth of his emotional collapse was a stark reminder of the impact of her own actions. Morgan's breakdown reached a climax as he dropped to his knees in front of Jenny, his hands clasped together in a pleading gesture. "Please, Jenny, I need you. I can't live like this anymore. I'm begging you to forgive me. I promise I'll do whatever it takes to make amends." Jenny's heart ached at the sight of Morgan's despair. The sight of him so vulnerable was a sobering reminder of the man she had once loved and the pain he had inflicted. She had sought revenge, but seeing the extent of Morgan's suffering made her question whether her actions had been justified. Chapter 15. Jenny's decision. As the days passed since Morgan's breakdown, Jenny found herself at a crossroads. The revenge she had meticulously planned had brought her a certain sense of satisfaction, but it had also inflicted profound pain on both herself and Morgan. The toll of her actions weighed heavily on her conscience, and the sight of Morgan's shattered state made her reconsider her approach. Jenny spent several days reflecting on the state of their relationship and the emotional wreckage caused by her quest for revenge. The process of introspection was difficult, but she began to recognize that her actions had been driven by a desire for retribution rather than genuine healing. The cycle of pain and manipulation had only deepened the rift between them, and she began to question whether it was worth the cost. One evening, Jenny and Morgan sat together in the living room. The air between them was thick with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. Jenny had spent the day contemplating the future of their marriage, and she had reached a decision. Turning to Morgan, she saw the exhaustion etched into his features and the flicker of hope in his eyes. The depth of his remorse was evident, and it was clear that he was committed to doing whatever it took to repair their relationship. Despite the pain he had caused her, Jenny saw a man who was genuinely willing to change and make amends. "Morgan," Jenny began softly, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened. I see now that my quest for revenge has gone too far. I wanted you to feel the pain I was feeling, but in doing so, I only made things worse for both of us." Morgan's eyes widened, a mix of relief and apprehension crossing his face. He waited for Jenny to continue, his heart pounding with anticipation. "I realize now that what we need is not more punishment or suffering," Jenny continued. "We need to find a way to heal and move forward. I can see that you're genuinely remorseful, and that means something. I've been so focused on making you pay for your mistakes that I forgot what really matters." Jenny paused, taking a deep breath before continuing. "I've decided that I want to try to rebuild our marriage. I want us to work through this and find a way to heal. I know it won't be easy, and it will take time, but I believe we owe it to ourselves to give it a chance." Morgan's eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Jenny. I promise I'll do everything I can to make things right. I know I've hurt you deeply, but I'm ready to face whatever it takes to prove my commitment to you." Jenny nodded, her own tears spilling over. The decision to forgive and rebuild was a difficult one, but it was also a hopeful step toward recovery. She understood that true forgiveness would require effort and patience from both of them. The journey ahead would not be easy, but it was a necessary path toward healing and reconciliation. As they held each other, the weight of their past mistakes began to lift, replaced by the possibility of a future where they could work through their pain and rebuild their trust. Jenny's decision marked the beginning of a new chapter in their relationship, one that would require both of them to confront their past and embrace the potential for a renewed and strengthened bond. Chapter 16. Rebuilding Trust. After Jenny's decision to work on their marriage, she and Morgan embarked on the difficult journey of rebuilding trust. They sought the help of a couples therapist, Dr. Elaine Harper, a seasoned professional with a calm and empathetic demeanor. Their first session was an emotional one, filled with raw honesty and underlying tension. The therapy room was warm and inviting, with soft lighting and comfortable seating. Dr. Harper began by creating a safe space where both Jenny and Morgan could express their feelings without fear of judgment. She encouraged them to speak openly about their pain, their needs, and their expectations for the future. Morgan was the first to speak, his voice trembling as he recounted the guilt and regret he had felt since his betrayal. He admitted to his mistakes, acknowledged the hurt he had caused Jenny, and expressed his deep desire to make amends. His words were laden with remorse, and it was evident that he was committed to doing whatever it took to regain Jenny's trust. Jenny, on the other hand, was initially guarded. She struggled to articulate the depth of her pain and the impact of Morgan's actions on her sense of self and their relationship. However, with Dr. Harper's guidance, she began to open up, revealing the emotional turmoil she had experienced. The therapy sessions provided her with a structured environment to voice her feelings and work through her anger and betrayal. One key focus of their therapy was improving communication. Dr. Harper introduced them to techniques for active listening and expressing feelings constructively. They practiced these techniques during their sessions, learning to listen to each other without interrupting and to respond with empathy rather than defensiveness. Dr. Harper also helped them set realistic goals for their relationship. They worked on rebuilding intimacy and trust through exercises designed to strengthen their emotional connection. This included spending quality time together, engaging in activities they both enjoyed, and expressing appreciation for each other's efforts. Over time, the therapy sessions became a crucial part of their routine. They both grew more comfortable with the process and began to see small but significant changes in their interactions. Morgan made a conscious effort to be more attentive and supportive, while Jenny worked on letting go of some of her resentment and embracing the possibility of forgiveness. The process was far from easy. There were setbacks and moments of doubt, but with Dr. Harper's support and their own determination, Jenny and Morgan began to rebuild their trust. The therapy sessions provided them with tools to address their problems openly and honestly, laying the groundwork for a healthier and more resilient relationship. Chapter 17. Moving Forward. As the weeks turned into months, Jenny and Morgan's relationship began to strengthen. Their efforts in therapy paid off as they rediscovered their love and commitment to each other. They made a concerted effort to create new positive memories and to rebuild the connection that had been damaged. One of the most significant changes was their renewed focus on quality time together. They started planning regular date nights and weekend getaways, allowing them to reconnect in a relaxed and enjoyable setting. They also made an effort to engage in activities that brought them joy and laughter, from hiking in nature to cooking meals together. Their conversations became more meaningful and less fraught with tension. They learned to address their issues openly without letting resentment fester. Morgan's sincere efforts to make amends and Jenny's willingness to forgive created a foundation for a healthier relationship dynamic. They found themselves laughing together more often and appreciating each other's company in a way they hadn't in years. The painful memories of their island vacation gradually faded into the background. The vacation that had once been a symbol of betrayal and heartache was now overshadowed by the progress they had made together. Their focus shifted from the past to their present and future, and they found solace in the strength of their renewed bond. Their journey toward healing was marked by moments of growth and self-discovery. They began to see each other in a new light, recognizing the resilience and commitment that had carried them through their darkest moments. The relationship they were rebuilding was more authentic and appreciative of the love they had for one another. Jenny and Morgan's efforts to move forward were evident in their day-to-day interactions. They were more attuned to each other's needs and more supportive of each other's dreams. The trust that had once been shattered was gradually restored, and they found themselves embracing a future filled with hope and possibility. Chapter 18. A New Beginning. After months of hard work and emotional healing, Jenny and Morgan decided it was time for a fresh start. They planned another vacation, this time to a different destination that symbolized their new beginning. The trip was not only a celebration of their progress, but also an opportunity to create positive memories that would replace the painful ones from their previous vacation. They chose a destination known for its serene landscapes and tranquil atmosphere, a stark contrast to the island where their troubles had begun. The new location offered lush forests, crystal-clear lakes, and charming countryside views. It was a place where they could immerse themselves in nature and focus on their renewed relationship. Their vacation was filled with activities that allowed them to connect on a deeper level. They enjoyed scenic hikes, romantic boat rides, and quiet evenings by the fire. Each day was an opportunity to enjoy each other's company and reflect on the progress they had made. The peaceful environment and the beauty of their surroundings provided a sense of rejuvenation and hope. The new vacation spot became a symbol of their commitment to moving forward. It represented not only a physical escape from their past, but also a metaphorical departure from the pain and betrayal that had once defined their relationship. The experiences they shared during this trip helped them solidify their bond and reinforce their dedication to building a future together. Jenny and Morgan returned from their second vacation with a renewed sense of optimism and understanding. They had faced their darkest moments and emerged stronger and more united. The challenges they had overcome had deepened their appreciation for each other and strengthened their marriage. Epilogue. As Jenny and Morgan settled back into their daily lives after their second vacation, they carried with them a deeper understanding of each other and a stronger sense of partnership. The journey they had undertaken, from betrayal to reconciliation, had been arduous but ultimately transformative. Their relationship was no longer defined by past mistakes, but by their commitment to each other and their shared vision for the future. They continued to build on the lessons they had learned in therapy and through their experiences, striving to nurture their bond with honesty, respect, and love. The memories of their first vacation remained as a poignant reminder of their journey, but they no longer held the same power over their lives. The past had been acknowledged and worked through, leaving them free to embrace the present and look forward to the future with hope and confidence. Jenny and Morgan faced the future with a renewed sense of purpose, ready to embrace whatever challenges and joys lay ahead. Their love, forged through adversity and tempered by understanding, was stronger than ever. They had emerged from their darkest moments together, and they were prepared to face the future as a united and resilient couple.